Go ahead, Michelle.
Welcome to this public lecture organized by the Ottawa Network for Borderline Personality Disorder. We're being recorded on Wednesday, June 12th, 2024. My name is Michelle Langlois. I'm the president of the ONBPD, which is a federally incorporated and registered charity in Canada. This evening's presentation is offered by one of our esteemed board members and an Ottawa-based community mental health leader, Annie Spooner, who will explore the intersection between BPD and neurodivergence, including ADHD and autism with us this evening. Before we start, there are a few housekeeping items I'd like to cover off. This is a webinar format, meaning your cameras are automatically turned off and the speakers are muted. Annie's presentation will be followed by a 30-minute question and answer period. You can use the Q&A tool to write and send any questions that come up for you at any time during the presentation. Myself and with the help of my two colleagues, Danielle and Peggy, will, to the extent possible, ensure that your questions are asked at the end of the webinar. If you want your question to remain anonymous, please be mindful to check off the anonymous box before sending it. We also ask that you don't include any identifying information or anything that could be considered private or confidential, please. I'd like to acknowledge the support that we receive from our donors who make these lectures possible. And I also like to underscore the fact that the material that we present in these and all of our public lectures should be considered for information only and not advice. It's now my pleasure to introduce this evening's speaker. So Annie Spooner is a neurodivergence coach, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, in Ottawa, who incorporates Dialectical Behavior Therapy, so DBT, into her practice. Annie works with families to address big emotions among children and adults. Her big emotions parenting coaching practice supports parents of intense, sensitive, emotional, perceptive, energetic, persistent, or spirited children. And her big emotions coaching practice helps adults grapple with emotion dysregulation, autism, ADHD, BPD, RSD, anger issues, anxiety, extreme sensitivity, and giftedness. Annie's strategy emphasizes the strengths and the potential that can be found within neurodiversity and delivering approaches to handle emotions and enhance these different skills. So Annie, we look forward to learning more about the insights and strategies that you're going to share with us this evening. Please join me in welcoming Annie.
Thank you. I'm like waiting for the applause. Thank you. Okay, so thank you so much, Michelle. And I am so happy to be here today. Yes, I am a parenting coach. I deal mostly with ADHD, but within this is all kinds of other comorbidities, what are called comorbidities. I have been working in this field for over 20 years. I started at Women's College Hospital in the Body Image Project in Toronto. And for the past 12 years, I've been focusing on how different brains impact people, themselves, and their loved ones. Another part of what I do is I hopefully help change how people view differences in general. Slide, next. So I'm going to start with a little story. Imagine you're in grade 12 and you've spent the entire night studying for your history exam. It's the last exam of the week and the next one isn't until Monday. So you're exhausted, mostly because you've crammed the whole night, but you're relieved because this week is about to be done. So you get to school 10 minutes early and before the exam starts, you kind of head towards the classroom And you notice that your classmates from your German classroom, your German class, are all lining up in front of the German classroom door. And suddenly your heart starts pounding and you begin to sweat. And you ask your classmate what exam they're lining up for, and they tell you it's the German exam. What? What? It's not the history exam? How could I have misunderstood this? Like so completely. And you stand there feeling completely lost. Everything is spinning like you've just stepped into the Twilight Zone. And you don't understand how this is possible. But this isn't the first time that this happens to you. And unfortunately, it's not going to be the last. And this is a true story of my life. And I have many others like this I could tell you. Now, let me tell you a little bit of another story going further back from when I was really young. And I would sit on our basement floor, carpeted floor, and I would play with my Barbie. And I would braid her hair. But what I would do is I would take 3 strands of hair and I would braid those 3 strands until the whole head was full. And then I would take the 3 braids and I would braid those and I would braid them until I got one big braid. And then, this was as much fun, I would undo the braids with my nails really slowly, really delicately. And I could do this for hours. And it was really relaxing and really soothing to me. So these 2 stories highlight kind of different moments in my life, but they're connected by a common thread. And this has to do with the different way my brain processes and responds to the world around me. So today, I want to share with you how understanding and embracing neurodiversity can transform all our lives. Next. Oh, we missed that one. Okay, sorry, I didn't tell you, it's my fault. Next. Next. Oh, I like that slide. If you could just come back, sorry about that. So this is part of ADHD. You're witnessing it live. I just like this, what this says. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. And believe me, a lot of neurodivergent people feel like this. Next. Thank you. So before we go on, I'm going to quickly explain to you what neurodivergence means in case you don't know, because it's not a new word, but it's being used a lot more lately. So neurodivergence means processing, learning, or behaving in different ways than typical or neurotypical. Okay, this is what we call it, neurotypical. So neurodiversity is a way of understanding how these different brains work and focus on the fact that we're all of us are think and process information and learn and understand differently from each other. And this is a natural part of human evolution, basically. There's the neurodiversity paradigm. And this suggests that things like autism, ADHD, BPD, and dyslexia that I'm not really going to talk about tonight, but that's a rock star of neurodivergence that I love. These aren't necessarily problems to be fixed, but instead are just different ways of thinking and experiencing the world. So instead of seeing these traits as disorders, neurodiversity views them as part of a wide range of human diversity. So this approach encourages us to respect and accept these differences like that we can focus on, people's strengths, which neurodivergents have a lot of, and their unique challenges, which they also have a lot of. In ADHD, we call that twice exceptional, or 2E. And it means we exceptionally have challenges, and we can sometimes be exceptionally gifted in other things. So this means that slowly, especially since there's now a very strong neurodivergence movement with people connecting all over social media, especially, we're not seeing it as a problem, but just, again, a different way of experiencing the world. And since neurodivergents often have what we call an innovator brain, a lot of new discoveries, most new technologies, or even artistic advances are often done by neurodivergents. So really, the biggest challenge for them, for us, comes from society adapting to us, and a lack of understanding, compassion, and accommodations. Next. So it's estimated that about 15 to 20% of people are considered neurodivergent. And this covers a bunch of different ways people's brain process information and develop. So beyond ADHD, autism, and BPD, you can see here on the slide that there is a lot more. And what they all have in common is that they each represent unique ways of knowing, learning, understanding, communicating, thinking, feeling, and experiencing the world. And when you think of if you have people in your life who have BPD, you know this to be true, right? They experience things differently. Next. So tonight, I'm going to have a sip of water. So tonight, I'm going to talk about 3 major neurodivergent profiles. So ADHD, autism, and BPD. And their similarities, especially how they affect emotional dysregulation. All 3 of these experience challenging big emotions, or what you might call emotional dysregulation. I don't really want to talk about the behaviors that these cause as much as I want you to understand how common these big emotions are for neurodivergence, and really what causes them, and how incredible change can come from you knowing this, from this knowledge. So, as you know, I'm neurodivergent myself. And like most people who have diverse brains, I have children, as I have 3 children, who are also neurodivergent because of genetic inheritance. And because most of us are attracted to other neurodivergent people who get us and are, they have this different brain also. I'm also married to a neurodivergent person. So between the 5 members of my family, we have ADHD, dyslexia, borderline personality disorder, autism, OCD, hoarding disorder, and 5 or 6 more that I'm not going to include because it's just going to take all night. Next. So guess what all these people have in common? As a society, we've been socialized to think there's a right way of being in the world. And because of this, we might have expectations that our loved ones should feel and behave like everybody else. And at the same time, we really admire successful neurodivergent people, right? We've got like Elon Musk, Richard Branson, Bill Gates. They're dyslexic and have ADHD. Billie Eilish was autistic, Ryan Gosling, ADHD, Charles Darwin, BPD. So does Angelina Jolie and Lady Gaga, BPD. We've got Simone Biles and Michael Phelps, who are exceptional athletes, who both have ADHD. Albert Einstein, believed to have had dyslexia, ADHD, and autism. And add to this list pretty much all the billionaires of the world, because when you look into it, most of them are neurodivergent. So the neurodivergents on your left, they're the ADHDers. The ones in the middle, they're autistic, and on your right is the BPD people. So basically, we admire these exceptional people, right? Neurodivergent people. But we often see our own neurodivergent loved ones as non-compliant, disagreeable, oppositional, because they don't fit the traditional mold. Sometimes, and I see this all the time in my practice, sometimes we're so scared of the world rejecting our unique loved one that we end up doing exactly what we fear society will do to them. So we've got shaming, fighting, bullying, punishing them for things that are basically beyond their control. So this is where radical acceptance comes in. And if you don't know what that is, it's about accepting reality as it is, not fighting it, not as you wish it to be, right? You can either hold onto unrealistic expectations and cause more suffering, or accept the truth. Accept what is, right? Accept reality. And then you let your loved ones thrive and be empowered. Just like all these famous people that we see in front of us, right? They're empowered and they thrive. They thrive because of their special brains. So, and in spite of what they've lived, right? So do this exercise. I'm starting right now with giving you homework. Do this exercise this week. Observe your loved one like they're a butterfly. They're orange, they're black, they land on a flower. And when they land on a flower, you don't think, why are they landing on that damn flower again? Right? You look at your butterfly and you say, they're landing on the flower because that's what this butterfly does. So you do this without any judgment and with curiosity, like, interesting. And if a judgment comes into your mind, you just go, oh, that's a judgment. If you hear the word should coming out of your mouth or even in your head, just look at it. That's a judgment and let it go. Let it go and open your mind. And do this with curiosity, just like you would with watching a butterfly land on a flower. So, next. So I'd like to give you a better idea of, for those who are not familiar with what ADHD, autism, and BPD is about. So ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactive disorder, mostly involves people struggling to control their actions. And mostly these actions that they can't do or that they do too much of, and their impulses along with these actions. So Dr. Russell Barkley, who's the rock star of ADHD, says this is this has to do with a lack of ability to control their actions and impulses, leads to much bigger problems like executive dysfunction. And what is executive functions? It's the mental skills we all use to manage our time. Oh, time blindness for ADHDers is out of control. To manage our time, plan tasks, remember instructions, and regulate our emotions, right? So, for example, people with ADHD can have trouble holding visual images or verbal information in their minds, which is like absolutely important for planning and problem solving. And so this is why we have so much, it's so hard for us at school. A teacher will tell us something and we'll just, forget it by the time we start to do the work. We can't keep it in our minds. Barkley also says that ADHD is more about performance than knowledge. So people with ADHD typically know what they should do. Like we know, I don't even like that word. We know what we would like to be doing, but they struggle to actually do it because of these underlying issues with self-control and executive functioning. So for example, you're going to ask an ADHDer to, like when they're little, to go brush their teeth. And here, parents, if you're with a partner or just to yourself, you might start nodding your head. You ask them to go brush their teeth about 15 times, finally convince them. They go to brush their teeth, and 15 minutes later, you come and check on them, and they're in the bathroom, dancing in the mirror with their toothbrush as a microphone, and they haven't brushed their teeth, right? Typical ADHD stuff. So this instability to control their actions and their impulses affects literally every part of their lives, including their relationships, their school, or their work, like their performance. And for ADHDers, for sure, their safety, right? ADHDers are renowned to have a lot of accidents. A lot of head injuries, getting hit by cars, having car accidents, specifically teenagers. So you can see some challenging traits of ADHD or ADHDers on the slide, but I really want to mention some of the positives. So, and I have tons of stories to go with this, but we don't have enough time. But ADHDers are really creative. It's actually, one of the signs of ADHD. If you have an extremely creative person who just can't stop creating, very imaginative, able to think outside the box. We can hyper-focus on things, creating really, really incredible things, coming up with really amazing projects. I'm going to give you an example here. I started going to the library every lunchtime in grade 9 to read psychology. And the teacher, the librarian would keep all the psychology books for me. And I'd walk in and she'd like give me the new books that were coming in. And I just continued to do that. And I've been reading at least 20 papers, scientific papers, every single day for the past 25 years. Like, I just can't help myself. So this hyper focus that we have, right? And it can be a hyper focus can also be, let's say I'm painting, I'm doing art. I can do it for 14 hours. It doesn't matter that I can't lift my arm anymore. I just have to finish it. Something in my brain, right, said that. So we have a lot of energy. We're super curious, very, very curious. We'll ask a lot of questions when we're young. Adaptable, spontaneous. A lot of people who are shy will kind of like ADHDers because we're spontaneous. We're good at multitasking, we're passionate, we're resilient, we persevere. And we're very, very sensitive. and sensitive to our environment. Another quality is, we might, we're very quick thinkers. So if there's an emergency, I always say that you want to be with an ADHDer because we're going to move. Next. Now, this is really important about ADHD. There's something else that causes emotional dysregulation for us. And this is called rejection sensitive dysphoria, RSD. It's not approved yet as like a real thing, but everybody is actually agreeing that it does exist, right? And it will be part of I guess, the DSM-5 at some point. So rejection sensitive dysphoria is extreme emotional sensitivity and pain triggered by a feeling of being rejected or criticized by important people in our life. And it can also be triggered by a sense of falling short. So failing to meet your own expectations or somebody else's standards, right? Or their high standards. I know you've all felt like this in your life, right? Before. And I'm wondering if you can try to remember when your boss or your spouse's expectations were you weren't able to meet them. And now imagine feeling that pain and the rumination of what was said to you over and over and over in your brain. And this can happen, just kind of daily, weekly, and for years. You can have the same, going to bed at night, having that same thing that you think about that somebody said to you. So there's another thing that I just want to compare it to, and some people might be already thinking, this sounds like BPD. Yeah, for me too. It sounds a lot like BPD, right? Next. So what is autism? Autism is a processing difference. And this affects, just like ADHD, it affects every part of your life, okay? Autistic people process information and sense things, like they feel things and interact with others differently. So you've probably heard of autism spectrum disorder, ASD, but most autistics prefer just autistic now. So we're not doing the person with autism anymore. There isn't a typical autistic person, and because everybody is unique. And one thing that is said in the community is, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. So one of the things with autism that's really interesting to me is that it takes a long time to get diagnosed. And there's a 2021 study that showed that over 75% of people waited 8 years or more before being diagnosed. And they had to continuously go and complain about what they were feeling. It's even harder for a woman because most of the research is done on boys and men. And women are not the same when it comes to autism. They don't show the same traits. So a lot of women are not diagnosed. They also mask a lot. So women mask a little more than men. And masking is something that ADHDers, autistics, and BPDers do a lot. It's kind of pretend to be neurotypical. And I have a story. about this. So in my early 20s, I was hospitalized for a burnout and suicidal ideation. So I was at university and I was just so overwhelmed. And the psychiatrist walks into my room and I'm sitting there in the bed. And the first thing she says to me is, "Why are you smiling?" And from that moment on, I knew that I was masking, right? I was like, I couldn't answer that question. So you can see some of the challenges of autism on this slide, but I'd like to say some of the fun stuff. So autistic people have exceptional attention to detail and they notice patterns. And they notice things that other people might overlook. So they like have this kind of focus, they can zoom in. Despite the stereotypes, many autistic people experience deep empathy and compassion, and they form very, very strong emotional bonds with people. Their unique perspectives can lead to creative solutions and innovation. And here you have to think of Tesla. We've got tons of other innovators that changed the world. Navigating a world that often misunderstands autistic people. They have a really strong sense of resilience and determination, even with all the things that they have to go through. Next. I'm going to tell you a story. My husband gave me permission to share what happens with him when he's emotionally dysregulated. So he's autistic. He's an ADHDer. He has PDA, which is called pathological demand avoidance, or I prefer to call it realistic demand avoidance. So PDA is when autistic people feel completely overwhelmed by requests and they just have to say no because the request makes their brain go into fight flight instantly. So he is absolutely the kindest person. He's an amazing dad who's literally drives my kids all day long. He just gets out of work, goes and drives them, goes back to work, and stays longer doing his work so that the kids can be driven everywhere. But once in a while, when I ask him, when the kids have asked him to pick them up at school, and then he gets to have to pick the other one at the gym, and I ask him to pick up something up at Costco, and we might have like had a little fight in the morning, okay? Or I might have said something that upset him, which can happen, right? In couples, especially after 22 years, he's going to feel really overwhelmed. Of course, anyone would feel overwhelmed, right? But what happens to him is different than what happens to neurotypicals. But you would have no idea that this guy is autistic by just looking at him or meeting him, which is the case for a lot of autistic people, right? First of all, he'll get angry and he'll say that we expect too much from him. So he's just, overwhelmed. Then he'll start stomping around the kitchen in a pretty frantic way. And then he is going to run down the stairs and scream in despair. And he'll then cry and be really, really dysregulated. And sometimes this can last for 2 to 3 days after a meltdown. So this is called an autistic meltdown. And looking at it from the outside, people might judge and think, what is a grown man, doing, losing it like this? But if you knew and understood what was going on for him, how hard it is for him, you might stop judging. Here's what's going on, okay? And you might see your own loved one in this. For him, going to the store is a sensory overload nightmare, okay? That's why I I created this image using chat. I wanted to show this is what he feels like when he goes to Costco. Why? Because he has heightened auditory sensitivity. Autistic people's brains process sound really intensely. And you know how Costco is. And so he becomes disoriented and he can't think, he can't focus clearly. And also due to the autistic brain's, the autistic brain is less effective ability of filtering and even prioritizing sensory information. So anything that's coming in. And so they can really find it hard to focus. There's the lights, there's the smells, there's moving people. This is all creating a sensory overload. And it also makes you feel like everything is happening at once, and it becomes really hard to filter out all the unimportant stuff and focus on actually shopping. So he's tired, he's hungry, and you know, from his day of work, and he gets home and he feels like he's losing actual control over his body and his mind. And it becomes really hard for him to speak. At that moment, he just can't speak. He's trying to move or to think straight. And he told me that during a meltdown, it feels like his whole body is just in full panic mode with a racing heart and sweating and an urgent need to actually escape. So like he's running from a lion, right? And this means that he's in reptilian brain, in the back of his mind, in his brain, and he's in flight mode, right? That's why he runs down the stairs. So in this story, you might see your loved one. And if it's the case, they definitely have sensory processing issues, and they possibly are autistic. Next. So BPD. So BPD, which is also sometimes called emotionally unstable personality disorder, which I don't like I don't like it more than BPD, but with the word unstable, I really like the word overwhelmed in there instead. It's not actually classified as officially classified as neurodivergence yet, but it's starting to be recognized as one because of how it affects the brain's decisions, the impulse control, the relationships. So most people in neurodivergence actually accept that neurodivergence fits the definition, and we use it. So when I started an ADHD clinic a while back, I was told to avoid two types of people: divorcing couples and people with BPD. Oh, well, that surprised me because I had been working with people who have BPD for a long, long time. And I had as much success with them as with my ADHD and autistic clients. And honestly, I would definitely pick BPD clients over fighting couples any day. I can tell you, I've had to deal with that. So research shows that BPD can be treated successfully. We know that. And this kind of challenges this idea that, you know, the person who warned me about this had. It's also being recognized right now in research as, or being described as a chronic pain condition, which explains the intense emotional pain those with BPD feel, right? It's like how we'd understand someone with severe arthritis pain being moody, right? It would be so good to understand BPD the same way. So focusing only on the negative traits of BPD really ignores the actual person and their strengths. So people with BPD are often very deep thinkers, very intuitive, creative, and they're very self-aware. Next. So I'm just going to go, I just want you to see this slide basically. So I choose to use this image because if you wanted to know more about ADHD, autism, or BPD, you should definitely find Dr. Neff's easy to understand information. And she has workbooks that are amazing. So she's at selfcompassion.org. But you can see the links here between ADHD, BPD, and autism. But I'm not covering this exactly today. I'm really looking at emotional dysregulation. Next, because I'm mindful of the time. So when it comes to those with autism, ADHD, and BPD, we know that emotional dysregulation is a huge part of their life. It's a really intense, overwhelming emotional experience that can really be hard to manage and control, for sure. And it's not just about feeling emotions strongly, but about these emotions, how fast they can escalate, right? Sometimes without an obvious trigger. And not to us anyway. And it can lead to responses that might seem completely out of proportion for those people who are observing this. Next. So imagine that you're driving, you're going 40 on a residential street, and you're chill, you're not in a hurry, and in front of you, there's a school, and there's cars coming the other side, the other way. You look in your mirror, and you notice that somebody's coming, they're going at least 90. What happens to you in that moment is that your brain starts moving to the back, right, into reptilian brain. You're getting ready to fight, flight, freeze, fawn, okay? So the car is coming, it comes, it passes you, boom, it's past you. There's another car coming, you're in front of that school right now, and you lose it, okay? Yeah, what is it? You start swearing, you start going, what is wrong with that person? They could have killed us. Okay. Now, in that moment, if somebody talked to you and asked you to can you calm down? Calm down, please. Stop swearing like that in front of the kids. Or honey, like maybe they have an emergency. You will not feel good, right? You wouldn't feel regulated. And I want you to think that, about what would happen if you were stuck in this mode hour upon hour, like every day. So you're in fight flight mode, and it doesn't matter how someone asked you not to feel what you're feeling, you're going to feel it and have to go through it, right? So I'd love for you to start to try to think of how you would like others to treat you in that moment or react to you. And especially if you live this multiple times per day. So next. So emotional dysregulation for ADHDers means struggling with frustration and sometimes excitement that can shift really quickly. So it can make it really hard to stay calm or focused. For autistic people, it can involve feeling intense or having really intense reactions to your environment, to sensory stuff that's coming into the brain. And at that moment, your emotions can just take over. And like I said earlier, it's hard to express in ways that others understand. For those with BPD, it means experiencing emotions with so much intensity that they can feel like they're literally being swallowed by them, right? So now emotional dysregulation in neurodivergent individuals it's not a choice. It's not a choice. And it's not a failure of character. It's a deeply ingrained part of their brain. And it just reflects the unique way that their brain processes and responds to the world around them. And I know you've heard this before, especially if you've taken ONBPD's amazing Family Connections course. But you need to have understanding, empathy, and validate these experiences that they're going through. Next. So I've used research from 13 of the latest scientific articles and to compare for you to see where ADHDers, autistics, and BPDers stand when it comes to emotional dysregulations compared to neurotypicals. As you can see here, it's a crazy huge difference, right? So I'm going to go through this really quickly. I'm basically just going to show you the images, especially because of time. And I'd like to have your questions. That I find that very exciting. So I just want you to get a feeling like, oh my gosh, you know, like this is 4 times more than what I'd have to deal with, right? Okay, so when it comes to, next. And we're going to be going quickly here. Next. So we've got intense emotional responses. Okay, next. And you can look at neurotypicals, right? Impulsivity. And this is what I'm basing this all on, emotional dysregulation. So in this case, like impulsivity is caused by emotional dysregulation, or the impulsivity causes emotional dysregulation, right? One or the other. And so for ADHDers, like a small thing like, we're at impulsivity. Okay, perfect. Where are we? I'm so lost on my own thing. Okay, impulsivity. Okay. So for ADHDers, this means they could engage in really risky behaviors, unprotected sex, substance use. For impulsivity for an autistic person, they can just walk out of a crowded room, right? Because of sensory stuff. For BPDers, can spend money, they can use substance, they can self-harm to cope, but it's impulsive also, right? It's not like, oh, I've been thinking about this, I'm making a plan here. No, it's impulsive. And it's linked to emotional dysregulation and has to do with needing a quick relief sometimes. Next. So people with ADHD, autism, and BPD have a difficult time coming back down to baseline when they're emotionally dysregulated. And it takes a long time. So they all share that in common. Next. They have high emotional sensitivity. So we know that with ADHD, they have rejection sensitive dysphoria, which might make them, like, for example, avoid social interactions. For autistic folks, you can feel intense distress or social misunderstanding and sensory issues. And for BPD, they can have, big reactions to kind of minor conflicts sometimes that don't feel minor to them, and or perceived abandonment. And again, this leads to emotional dysregulation. Next. We've got mood swings. All of them have mood swings. Next. I don't know if you can hear my cat crying. He's locked in the room with me. We've got chronic stress and anxiety. And yeah, so and the stress and anxiety is like for people with ADHD, 50% of ADHDers are diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. So it's a lot. Next. Difficulties with social interaction. So all of them, when they're emotionally dysregulated, it can cause these problems, or having difficulty in relationships causes emotional dysregulation. Next. Again, I just want you to see compared to neurotypicals so that you start like going, oh my gosh, like this is so much, right? Poor self-esteem. Of course they have poor self-esteem. You know, they're stuck in this vicious cycle of not being understood or feeling overwhelmed. You know, being told that their behaviors are not okay. Next. And this interferes with their daily lives, daily activities for all of them. Next. We've got co-occurring mental health issues. So we've got, you know, a lot of depression, anxiety, substance use, and trauma for all of them. And versus neurotypicals, we're not saying neurotypicals don't live this, but it's much, much higher in these people. Next. And sensory processing. So all of these neurodivergences, there's like this overwhelming sensory input that can trigger intense emotional reactions, which kind of leads to much more emotional dysregulation, right? Next. Okay. So what my goal is tonight in showing you these graphs is that I want you to start looking for these traits in your loved ones. If you suspect ADHD, like that your loved one might have ADHD, they need to get diagnosed like ASAP and put on ADHD medication. And I'm saying this, I am not a doctor, but I've sent hundreds of people to go see their doctors. This literally changes everything in an ADHDer's life. They become more emotionally regulated. Lots of studying on this now. They have less anxiety. Imagine like drinking 6 cups of coffee chills you out. They can control their impulsive behaviors. And a 2023 study found that ADHD medications were associated with positive outcomes for people with BPD, with a reduced risk of psychiatric rehospitalization. Sorry, there's my French. And it didn't matter why they were there or why they would have gone to the hospital. And no associations were found for benzodiazepine, antidepressants, antipsychotics, and mood stabilizers to keep these people out of the hospital. But ADHD medication did it. So I want you to start thinking, and this is not people with BPD who are diagnosed with ADHD. They're looking at this separate as an actual possible medication for BPD. Next. So what can we do to help? We can, you can check out Attitude magazine. It's amazing. ADDITU, Attitude magazine with ADD. Okay, it starts with ADD. They have info on ADHD, autism, and BPD. They have amazing free webinars with literally the best experts in the world coming to speak for free once a week. You can also get personal coaching for ADHD, autism, or BPD to improve kind of your life and theirs. So that's really, really helpful. I find that that when people come and see me, after the first session, there's a 50% improvement in the relationships in the house or the relationships outside the house. It's very amazing. Here's a tip to regulate emotions. And it helps with controlling your gray matter. So in your brain here, everybody, people with ADHD, autism, and BPD, they have less gray matter, which is what controls our impulses and our emotions and decision making. So we don't have enough. So the trick here is to meditate. And I can hear ADHDers screaming at the screen right now, going, meditation is so boring. How can we do it? And so I've hacked it. And I've been doing meditation for 25 years, and I do it at night. I put a recording on. So you go to YouTube and you go mindfulness, meditation, sleep. And you just fall asleep with your meditation, and it makes you breathe, and you do it. But this is why my brain, I think, I don't have emotional dysregulation anymore, which was horrible in my 20s, like horrible. And I don't have it. I can regulate my emotions. I can control my brain. So that's one of the things that I think would be great for you. And another reason to do it is so that there's less stress in your life. And we know that stresses really causes damage to the brain. And we don't need that when we have ADHD. I use DBT. So I really like DBT, and I use it for my ADHD clients, my autistic and my BPD clients, because it just manages emotional dysregulation, and I give tools and strategies that work from that. And another thing is just building a really strong support system. So a system of people who understand you. And if people don't understand you, maybe you can send them this video after it's done so that they get it, so that they understand what your loved one is going through, and possibly yourself, right? Because it is hereditary. Next. So of course, I'm guessing that after seeing the graphs, you now have a much better idea of how hard it is to control the intense waves of emotion that can take us over, right? ADHDers, autistics, and BPDers. And often we say that people, these kinds of people, can't see from other people's perspectives, right? But tonight, I want you to see from their perspective. No one intentionally is difficult. We all want to please others. It's actually in everyone's DNA to please those they care about, right? But they struggle due to this unique, different brain wiring and sensitivity. I'll often have clients, for example, who can't get over the fact that their loved one questions them, questions their decisions. They don't understand why they don't just, do the things that they ask them to. But if you understand this brain, you're going to understand that we don't take things at face value. We need an explanation. We need to know why. We can't just agree to anything that could also cause us pain, right? We know that it's hard to deal with these expectations. So we might resist, we might lie, because that's the only thing you might accept, right? Or people might accept. So we might make excuses. So you think they're rude or manipulative, but really it's just that they need a different kind of interactions than neurotypicals. Next. And this is my last slide. We can get to questions. So as we come to the end of this talk, tonight, I'd like to leave you with a message. Understanding and embracing neurodiversity is not just about recognizing differences. It's also about celebrating these differences, right? We've explored how ADHD, autism, and BPD share a common thread of emotional intensity and dysregulation. And these emotional experiences are not just challenging, they're a fundamental part of what makes people unique. So by recognizing these challenges and these strengths and understanding and creating environments that support them, then celebrate them, then we can bring about some change. Imagine a world where we stop focusing on our loved ones' inability to keep their room clean or their disorganization in general organized. And instead we focus on their creative mind, right? Instead of focusing on your person's explosive outbursts, you focus on how deeply they feel. And you start focusing on their strengths and their gifts. If it was you with this brain, how would you want to be seen? How would you want to be treated? Right? So as parents, siblings, parents, friends, and community members, we can change this narrative to a neurodiversity affirming one. We can move from feeling, frustrated and not understanding to empathy and support. And we can create spaces where neurodivergent people can feel valued and where their strengths are recognized and their unique perspectives are really appreciated. So tonight, I hope you're going to apply what you've learned, educate yourselves, continue to educate yourself. And remember, it's not about changing them to fit our world. It's about changing our world to fit them. And change is not easy. Remember how hard it is for you to change next time you're asking your loved one to do so. And have compassion for yourself too while you're learning about this. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for joining this amazing neurodivergent community. Any questions?
Okay, Annie, that was amazing, as I expected it would be.
You're so sweet.
I've had the pleasure of co-leading family connections classes with Annie. And before I get to the questions, and you'll be really happy to know there's lots.
Okay, good. I wish we had more time.
I know. I was waiting for the figure 20,000. Do you know what I'm talking about?
What? Oh, the 20,000. Yeah.
That's really that
important.
Yeah.
So what Peggy's talking about is that by the age of 10, kids, ADHD kids, will have heard 20,000 negative messages more than their peers. And so this affects their whole personality, right? And what we know is that a lot of people with BPD actually have ADHD, a lot. And I don't think I mentioned this during the presentation, but women are not diagnosed a lot with ADHD and autism. And not enough. They're missed all the time, but they're not missed for BPD. And ADHD and autism looks a lot like BPD. So, right? I have clients all the time who come and see me that are diagnosed with BPD, and they're like, oh, you deal with big emotions. First thing I notice, oh my gosh, they have ADHD. And then I check for autism. Oh yeah, of course, right?
Yeah.
If they were put on ADHD medication young, their brains would have changed. Actually, the brain changes. It doesn't matter at what age you get on ADHD medication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the role of invalidation is huge, huge for
Absolutely.
your
Absolutely.
population, which is very
Yeah.
sad. Okay, let's get on to the questions.
Okay.
So the first question, let me just get organized. What happens when a 17-year-old refuses assessment and diagnosis? Not many will assist with a diagnosis of ASD or other. The only diagnosis is ADHD and learning disabilities. Needs support, and it's not available thus far.
Yeah. You send them to me. I mean, I'm not advertising this for myself, but this is the issue. This kid is feeling like nobody gets him. All his life, he's been not doing the things that he was supposed to do. He doesn't want to get more diagnoses. He wants somebody to hear him, right? And so I get a lot of these teens who come and see me. And what I do, I do what I kind of did tonight. Like neurodivergence is amazing. And they come with shame. And after a few sessions, they're like, yeah, it's true. I can do this. Like my brain does work differently. And I'm like, yeah, let's embrace it. What could you do? And we start planning. Right.
Is there a way that she can get her son or daughter to you though?
Oh yeah. You know, she could say there's this like really neurodiversity affirming kind of coach, and it's not therapy, you know, and of course it's mixed in there, but we don't tell anybody. And it's just, you know, how about you just get help planning like you know what you want to do. You said you wanted to get a job, or you said you wanted to blah blah blah. But I know it's hard. You know, I know it's hard to get going on stuff. And you know, she can just help you get going. Then you work on everything, just like fixing, so that they can get rid of the shame, feel like they're organizing themselves, you know, getting what they want.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Annie.
Okay.
Next question.
Okay.
Where does perfectionism fit into neurodiversity categories?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So what a great question. Perfection, I have it. I'm one of them. So perfectionism, we know that in some people it comes from, it's so hard to understand that you start really, really working hard to make sure you don't miss stuff. And this turns into perfectionism. The other things is you feel stupid. So you know, you might have been called stupid. You know, a lot of people with neurodivergences are bullied because of a very big problem. And so that causes perfectionism also. There's also hyperfocus mixed in there. Okay. So if your person has ADHD, they might be so hyper-focused and they might like things to be a specific way. If they're autistic, and so I'm a little autistic, and my traits, one of the traits that kind of shows that I'm autistic is I like to do things very, very, very precisely. So if I'm chopping peppers, let's say, every slice has to be the same size and in little cubes. I'm not doing it because, oh my God, if I don't do it, somebody's going to die, which would be OCD, right? I'm doing it because it feels good. It feels so good to have order, right? So that's perfectionism. It takes me 2 hours to make, you know, a salsa or something. Next. Sorry, I'm talking too long. I want to get to more questions.
Okay. The next question is, my understanding is that we are to avoid referring to the person by their diagnosis, such as ADHD, or I know you do the opposite. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So this is the movement that's going on that I talked about. So there's a huge movement reclaiming our label. You know, we might not like it, but we're just gonna we're just gonna take it. Kind of like the gay community taking back queer, right? It used to be like something that was said to them, and now they take it as, you know. So that's what's going on in the community. I put BPDers because I'm throwing them in with neurodivergence, and I know that neurodivergents are really strong on this. There's also MAD. So people who have mental health issues, they say, oh yeah, I'm mad. So we're basically reclaiming.
Okay.
Yeah. So that, but you know, it's up to each individual. If they don't like it, then you don't.
So let me ask though, it's okay because you have ADHD to call
Yeah.
you an ADHDer. Is it okay for me to call you that?
So, well, it would be okay for me for sure, right? And because for me, it's empowering. Like it's not something that I'm ashamed of. And this is that thing that I do with these teens, right? Or adults or whoever. It's we're going to get rid of that feeling of like, shh, we're not going to say what we are. No, we're going to scream it. We're going to say, yeah, I'm this, and look at all the things I can do that's different, right? We're going to focus. I always tell people we're going to focus on strengths, because society always focuses on our weaknesses because of the system of school, right? That we go through. Yeah, so you would ask your, you know, your son or your daughter or whoever, and whatever they want.
What they want, right? Okay, thanks.
So the next question, are men and women affected by autism at the same rate? Or is it just because, you know, women are underdiagnosed?
Yeah, that's a very complicated one. And I actually read a study like last week about this. And the studies still show that men are you know, have more autism. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure because I recognize autism all the time in women, especially very high functioning women. Well, I don't like to use these terms, but it's same with ADHD. Some people are you know, are very affected. Others are more high functioning. I don't know. We don't know yet, right? And same with ADHD. We don't know because the studies are just starting to come out.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, even if you can accept that your neurodivergent loved one is different and processes differently, what can you do if they're not functioning in the world? They can't take care of themselves well, hold a job, executive functioning, etc.
So I have some some of those kids. So you support them as much as you can. And the whole tough love thing, it doesn't work really well with us, unfortunately. And, you know, we need the support. And I'm going to tell you something that's really interesting. People with ADHD, ADHDers, for example, okay, their brains are 3 to 5 years behind when they're children and adolescents when it comes to executive function. So impulsivity, making good decisions, understanding. So that's huge. That's Barkley who has these statistics. And most people's brains finish growing when they're 25 to 27. But for ADHDers, our brains don't stop growing until we're 30 to 40. So when we go to university at 18, we're 5 years younger, okay? we're lost. So you're going to see your kids like not able to get to keep a job, not able to, not even in their 20s. And when you're 35, when you have ADHD, you kind of go, oh my gosh, I get it. Like, I understand now, like how the world works, and until then it's very, very hard. So did I go off the question? I might have.
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
you're talking about understanding and compassion.
It is. It's
Yeah.
exactly. Thank you. It is about understanding
and
and
I've heard
compassion.
you talk many times about having an agenda for our people.
Yes, we need to be very careful with what are kind of imposing our agenda on people who might just not be able to, to meet those expectations. Good books to read, Dr. Ross Green with an E, especially if you have younger kids or teens. He talks a lot about expectations and not being able to meet expectations and the fight. You can want somebody to do something if they just can't do it, or you can't move them to do it because their brain won't let them. Then you go and find that one thing that they're amazing at, and you just like surround them with that until that thing makes them go out of the world, of this kind of restricted world, into the rest of the world.
Yeah, I believe his book's called The Explosive Child. Is that the one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of a classic. Yeah.
It is a classic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
You showed a bunch of graphs comparing ADHD, autistic, BPD, and neurotypical people. What units of measurement did you actually use on these graphs? Was it like a percentage of the population?
Yeah. So what I did, and this is why I was just kind of going through it, and it was more a feeling. What I did, I took all my research that I gathered, and I threw it into ChatGPT, and I asked ChatGPT to take out and compare all the units that were measured. And that's how I did it. But really, my goal was not to kind of give you this like official, I wasn't doing the scholarly thing in research and doing all the calculations myself. I really wanted you to just kind of have a feeling for it, right? So that you can see from research visually what it looks like, what I was seeing.
Okay. So it was kind of a summary of a whole bunch of different measurements.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so not scientific research, not at all.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Okay, the next few questions kind of merge together, so I'll do a few. What was the percentage of BPDers on ADHD meds that made a difference?
Okay, repeat that. Sorry.
Okay, what was the percentage of BPDers
Yes.
on ADHD meds that made a difference?
Oh, interesting. I don't know the percentage. I wish I did. I'm going to have to go back to that research. I have it in my references. I don't know the amount. I just know the results were actually really good. And I was quite surprised.
Okay, so significant in your eyes.
It was significant, and I will look that up, and if the person wants to email me, I will send them that article.
Okay.
Yep.
And another med question, just asking what are the ADHD meds? And I know there's an array of them. Are there any that you find more effective, or
this is interesting? Again, so with ADHD medication, we've got methylphenidate, and then we've got amphetamine-based medications. And both of these, you take these medications, and it's an instant result. So within about 15 minutes, half an hour, a little more for some people, how it makes you feel. So things like medication like Concerta work really well for some people. For some other people, it's Vyvanse, which is an amphetamine based. Some people can't handle kind of the jitteriness that it might cause. And to be frank, the jitteriness goes away after 3 days to 2 weeks. But at first, it's like drinking lots of coffee. But you get used to it, just like if you had a cup of coffee every day, you get used to it. But if somebody really can't deal with it, then you go to something like Strattera. And Strattera is, it's a long, you have to take it for a long time, just like you would an antidepressant. And normally, we always say that methylphenidate based or amphetamine based, so Concerta or Vyvanse or medications like that are better. But I just read a study this week saying, you know what, we just did this new research and comparing, taking all the literature, and it's showing that Strattera, so that the one that you're on, kind of more long acting, it has really, really good. It's very beneficial long term.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, and with ADHD medication, you have to find the right one for you, the one that goes with your the molecules in your brain, basically. And you don't know that until you try it.
Yeah.
But you'll know it's not your medication if you're super anxious, if you cry or you're aggressive. It should not make you feel like this. That's not your medication.
Okay.
A headache? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. And you were talking about gray matter and developing the gray matter with
mindfulness
meditation.
meditation. Yes.
Does medication also develop gray matter? If I understood the question right.
Yes, I like it. Yes. Yeah. Medication, actually, it's showing that it has a huge effect, positive effect on the brain. And I read a study not too long ago about they tested adults who had taken medication as children, adults with ADHD taken medication as children, and adults who had never taken ADHD medication. They did an MRI of their brain, and what they found was the adults who had been taking medications when they were kids, their brains looked like neurotypicals. And so they were really functioning much, much better. And the other people, their brains just looked like an ADHDer. Yeah. And yeah, no, and it physically changes your brain, and it doesn't seem to be taking that long from one of the studies I read, you know. Yeah.
Okay. Danielle, back to you.
Okay, lots of medication question here.
Okay.
Another one. So you said that ADD medication changes the brain, but is it only during the release of the medication, or is it like a permanent change?
No. Oh, good question. It is a permanent change.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
just fascinating. But so does meditation.
Yes. Of course. Wow. So she said she tried slow release Ritalin and she felt psychotic. And, you know, other people have said the same thing.
Yeah.
Is quick release better than slow release sometimes?
Oh my gosh.
Well, maybe that's a doctor's question.
Yeah, that's probably a doctor's question for sure. Slow release is generally always better.
Yeah.
It's so much smoother. But you know what? Again, it's trial and error, unfortunately. And some people have to try some really, really nice doctors, and I've seen it happen, will prescribe, you know, 1 week of this thing, 1 week of another, 1 week of the other, and the person can just do their own trial.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the ideal way, because you can really compare.
Yeah. And another person is saying that some doctors won't put a person on ADHD meds if they have had psychosis episodes, because they say that it can interact with psychosis.
that's very, very interesting. So I cannot speak for like general people, but I can speak about my own loved one. And when they had been on antipsychotics, antidepressives, all kinds of medications. The second they got put on ADHD medication, they chilled. Their anxiety was gone. They could function. They can go to school. They can get their things done. I could not believe the change. Now, this is my personal experience. I actually have not experienced this in my practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Good question, though. Very good question.
Hey, when working with BPD clients, how do you help them build their self-esteem?
Yeah. So first of all, we look at their strengths. So I use a strength-based approach. So I really, my first question is always, so what do you want to do? Like, if you could do anything in the world, what do you want to do? And we start making a list. And like right away, we start checking it off. Like after the third session, we've moved to a different level, right? Yeah, I hear them, I validate them, I make sure they know that they're not weird, that they're completely like an amazing part of society.
Yeah. Well, after being invalidated so much.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Sounds like a safe
Right.
place. And another question about your practice. Do you do the actual assessment diagnosis or send them elsewhere for that?
Yeah, I send them elsewhere. Yeah,
Okay, so
absolutely.
you have a practitioner that you send?
No, I don't, because I see people from all over Canada. I only do
okay.
Zoom. Yeah, I only do Zoom. So I send them to wherever they are, but I normally find them someone if they need me to find somebody.
Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, we're kind of getting to the bottom of questions here. Is it possible to go through life as a neurodivergent and not be aware? And that person's children also be neurodivergent and never be diagnosed? Would both of this person's children who have concurrent substance use disorders finally be diagnosed if
Yes.
treated for their addictions?
Absolutely. Oh my God, it makes me want to cry to hear that. Yes. Tons of people don't know. I would say that 70% of my clients, so I see parents a lot, right, who have young kids, and their kids are being diagnosed because or they're not diagnosed, and like their kids are having all kinds of problems. And I'm talking to them, it's like super obvious to me that they're, neurodivergent, they're autistic or have ADHD, and they don't know it. They just think that it's normal to struggle this much. So I start saying things to them like, I bet it's really, really hard for you to fold your clothes and put it away, right? And they're like, yeah, how do you know? Like, I just pile them up on a couch. And I'm like, yeah, I do the same thing, right? This is a trait, but we do that. And so, yes, absolutely possible to not know. Absolutely possible that they have substance use issues. It's like 50% of people with ADHD have substance use issues. It's crazy the amount, right? And so, yeah. And I have clients all the time who come and see me who have substance use issues, and I get them to be put on ADHD medication. And so, and now people are going to ask me the next question, which is, yeah, but if they're addicts and methylphenidate, you can get addicted to that. How do doctors really prescribe it? Yes, they do. They generally prescribe it 1 week at a time, and to help them just stay on track, right? And so, but once they're on there, wow, like they can go through their sobriety, and they have a clear mind. So, that's self-soothing. They don't need as much of it.
Right.
Right.
Well, ironically, one of the last questions says, why is it said ADHD on meds causes addictions in adulthood?
Yeah. Yeah, I've read that often too. And yes, some people could use medication to, to get high, but causes addiction. I don't know. I mean, ADHD causes addiction. We
Yeah.
know that.
Well, the
Like,
pain, right?
it's
Causes
the pain.
addiction.
It's living in this world that's not made for you. And so, and also you're impulsive and you want to have fun, and your brain, you need constant stimulation. Our brain, ADHD brains, like we're constantly seeking dopamine. So you're going to do drugs to replace that, right?
And
So yes, I've read the stuff on this too, and
can you be successful without medication?
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There's tons of people who are successful, I'm sure, without medication. It's just harder, much, much, much harder. Right. I don't know how to, I wish I had an example, because I've just started medication about 8 months ago, and I had never taken medication, and I have an idea and I can actually do it. Right. I'm like, I can get everything I want done. Well, not everything. It changes your life for sure.
Okay, I think we'll close the questions there. I apologize if we did not get to your question, but I think most of the questions, the answer was in there.
Okay.
The last one is how people are asking how to get a hold of you.
Bigemotions.ca. Bigemotions.ca. And you just contact me, and I'll answer, and we can talk. And we can do a 15-minute, consult to see if you like me. I hope you like me by now.
We like you, Annie.
Yeah.
Annie,
What?
I have to admit, I've been answering responses, and I've also been pointing people to Positive Kids.
Okay, well, if you have insurance, go to Positive Kids. I don't accept insurance, but I charge less. So,
Okay, sorry.
you
So
choose.
if
It's
you
okay.
could go to one or the other, and you could
It's
figure it out.
okay. If people don't have insurance, I'd rather they come to me, and like that, they're not being charged this huge amount of money.
Oh, so that is important.
Yeah, I have a sliding scale. I have a
So
sliding scale.
bigemotions.ca.
Yeah, I have a sliding scale. I never refuse anybody who doesn't have money, or it's just part of my thing. Yeah, but Positive Kids too. That's where I see a lot of clients who have insurance.
Okay,
Good.
well, Annie, what can I say? On behalf of ONBPD and our audience this evening, thank you for your authentic, insightful, informative, hopeful, and practical presentation. Like, I particularly found what's striking, the comparisons, to the neurotypical.
I know.
It really gives you cause to pause and reflect. And so your invitation for us to see the beauty in, appreciate, and celebrate the beautiful butterflies that surround us, and to focus on their uniqueness and see them as strengths.
Yes.
Exactly. I really appreciated that. I also appreciated the resources like the ADDitude.
Yes, ADDitude magazine. Love it.
The invitation incorporate mindfulness into our day-to-day. So thank you. And as evidenced by all the comments and the questions and in the chat, you very much appreciated. And so we're really grateful. I want to thank all our participants for your thought-provoking questions. And because a number of you have asked, a copy of this evening's presentation will be placed on the website within the week. And please, I did answer and provide Annie's contact information. I pointed you to one site, but I want to reinforce
two.
bigemotions.ca if you want to touch base with Annie.
Yeah.
And then a world of thanks as well to Danielle for
Oh,
organizing this evening's public lecture, to Peggy and Danielle for fielding the questions.
Thank you
So
so
this
much.
concludes our lecture this evening. I hope you'll join us in future ones. Thank you so much. to everyone.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciated your questions so much. And thank you for hearing me and, being patient with my ramblings.